Okay, here they are, direct from the West Mall. Let's welcome Twang, Twang, Shaka Boom.
Welcome to the It's No Secret podcast. I'm Catherine Cuellar. This week's episode recalls Twang Twang Shaka Boom's formation, from communal impromptu jams on the University of Texas campus West Mall to the band's first gig at the legendary Cactus Cafe.
My aunt is starship. She wears an honest blue dress.
Bassist Jeff Haley.
Well, they were freshmen. I was a sophomore at UT. We would go out and play in this part right outside the Cactus called the West Mall, which was like an open area, and usually there'd be political speeches or something there. It wasn't really like a music hangout.
Is there anything from the West Mall, any memory that jumps out at you?
What, West Mall memories?
Yeah.
Bassist Jeff Haley spoke with percussionist Chris Searles via Skype.
Our goal that day was to get enough tips to get to Conan's.
Uh-huh.
And we pulled it off, and so that's basically how we sealed the deal that we were going to do it again, you know. And we ended up at Conan's with Tim and Joel and probably Lee and Tommy.
Lee Tennant was David Garza's neighbor in the Taos co-op.
How did you get permission to do that? Or was there any sought the first time? Did you just ask for forgiveness?
Well, we never asked. We just kind of went for it. And then there were some problems that came up where we had to register as a student group.
Jeff Haley and Chris Searles spoke with Lee and Twang Twang Shaka Boom's soundman Yonder in Austin.
Because we were students, so I think somehow we had the right to be there if we organized as a student group. So once we organized as a student group, we could play. They never tried to stop us again. And we played once a week there for probably at least 15 times, maybe 25 times.
Yeah, most of the first semester and off and on after that.
Yeah, I guess it got a little trickier later on. But I'm sure we were still playing in the spring, too. That's probably when Jan took all those great photos.
The whole West Mall thing, David Garza, can you tell us in your own words why the West Mall was important or special?
I don't feel like I'm a boaster, but I have to boast. West Mall was a shit. And it was all my idea.
It's true. That's true.
Mic drop.
I mean, the very first time we played, the two things that really were kind of thrilling were, again, David's facile ability and such a complete musician at such an early age, and so broad and diverse and deep and, facile. He was an incredible entertainer, and he would bring people together like no one else in Austin, obviously, since or before. And he'd play and sing these songs that he'd written that everybody there could relate to, that were brilliant lyrically and melodically. And then he was playing crazy good stuff on his guitar, and he was making it work no matter what, come what may. And all of that was just really revolutionary in a very small way. And then, of course, being out there next to these beautiful old trees and the grackles and all that stuff permeated us and our music in a way that was both organic and as natural as drinking water, but also much deeper and more meaningful to me and probably you and I think definitely David than we really knew at that time.
And that's what I think Twang at our best is. We're this river, and the thing that gives it its flow is the audacity.
1,000 roses for my sweetheart. I will plant 1,000 roses. 1,000 oceans for my sweetheart. I will swim 1,000 oceans. 'Cause her teeth are white picket fence, and her eyes are a table of contents. It goes one, oh, that's the way I'll show that the status quo will always grow tomorrow. 1,000 sweet dreams for my sweetheart. I will interpret 1,000 sweet 1,000 nightmares. Oh, 'cause the cleft in her chin is like a car dent, and her eyes are a table of contents. It goes one, oh, that's the way I'll show that the status quo will always grow tomorrow. Sing it. Louder. 1,000 uh-ohs, 1,000 uh-ohs for my sweetheart. I will repeat, 1,000 uh-ohs. Oh, 'cause her teeth are a white picket fence, and her eyes are a table of contents. It goes one, and that's the way I'll show that the status quo will always grow tomorrow.
When you were sitting behind the drum kit or with your bongos,
Lee Tennant was David Garza's neighbor in the Taos Co-op and a Twang Twang Shakaboom muse.
when you were sitting behind that and you would look out at, the crowds that would gather on the West Mall, which kind of, for the time, radically changed the flow of traffic for students in between classes. That's a major intersection on campus. It's an iconic spot. What did you find yourself thinking? Can you recall what was going through your mind when you'd watch this crowd flock and gather?
Well, the first time we played, we were just trying to get enough tips to go buy pizza. Mm-hmm. So I think that was the first time. I was like, well, I think it's going to happen. I think we're going to get that $23 or whatever. After that, I think it was just always, the David experience is always in the moment, There's no time. There's only the present. So, seriously. So, that was, I don't remember thinking anything other than, wow, the whole time. And don't mess up.
Okay.
But if you do mess up, it's okay, because someone else is playing cowbell right now, and, it's all fun and games.
It was very interactive, those first shows on the West Mall, handing out the triangle and the shaker. And What about you, Jeff?
What were you thinking looking at all those people?
About West Mall?
Yeah.
Because the first time we played, we were guessing, but we thought we had maybe 300 people, which is probably not accurate, but it was a lot. It was definitely more than 30 people, it filled up.
Well, also the numbers are constantly changing. Probably 300 people sat and listened to at least one song.
Through the course of the whole 45 minutes or whatever. And another thing that I remember, sorry to interrupt you, but was being blown away by David all the time, because he just kept it going, and he was already like a mature performer.
Could MC and showcase.
And the next song was started as soon as the last song ended, and he made the audience laugh, and he would walk out and put his guitar behind his back and sing without his guitar, and Jeff and I were just along for the ride.
But a lot of people played on the mall,
Yonder Bro, a.k.a. Yonder Bro, Twang Twang soundman and tour manager.
But I think you guys were pushed into permits and all that because so many crowds, so many people. The crowd was so big, Other people, drawing 15 or so people didn't really get anybody's attention,
It's pretty amazing.
That interactive part was it felt new. I'd not spent a lot of time at UT before that, but it felt like because people would crowd in, they'd jostle for the right seat to be able to see. They would learn the words. They would, that interactiveness, it must have caught the attention of someone who said, okay, let's at least have a minimum of structure on this movement and get a handle on it.
It's odd, isn't it? I think the band was just well liked by the powers that be. There was only one time the cops came. this guy Kevin Turf that ran Enviromedia for a bunch of years and now has a Broadway hit called Come From Away. We're what we would be class of 94 or something like that, 94, 95. He's probably class of 90. And so he was the president of
Student Radio.
And he just told the cops that they had sponsored a show for us to play.
After they shut us, as they were shutting us down.
They were trying to come over and, kick us off. And,
okay.
But we were right in front of the architecture building, and I remember windows would go up after a while.
Yes.
People wanted to hear us.
Yes. Those poor Plan 2 students who needed a break from whatever they were cracking their skulls open for. Yes, they needed that. Yes.
Somehow it was okay with everybody.
Tommy Tennant met Lee and became best friends with her while they were neighbors with David in the Taos co-op.
Lee hardly ever got to go to any of the West Mall gigs, though, with me, because, she was always working at the parking garage. I was very much lived my life on campus, going to classes sometimes, but, mostly, hanging out on the West Mall, going to their gigs or, just running into people, skipping classes, blah, 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 Twang Twang Shakaboom's probably responsible for my GPA being about 1 point lower than it should have been because, I would always end up skipping so many classes. Because I'd always go to the gigs, and even if they didn't interfere with classes, you would run into people, and then, let's go for a coffee at the Cactus Cafe, or let's go eat, or, So, I did not do well my first semester of college. I was put on academic and had to, write a letter and, promise, second semester I'm going to get my grades up. Wish I did.
Listen, stratosphere, Jupiter, nuclear wars. I'll see all these on my next vacation if I save my money and keep my grades.
And I remember going to the first few and the crowds just kept getting bigger and bigger.
It was just so enjoyable, What can you say?
I've seen some of those pictures, and you got really good capture on the faces in the crowd of people just blissfully joyous, having their best moments in the middle of their day.
That was it. That was all those mall shows.
And there are photos that, show that you can't get all the people into the frame after we'd been doing it for a while. But his natural habitat seemed to be the West Mall. And and you and I were just kind of, another thing I remember being thrilling is looking at you and you smiling and us just being like, what is going on here? Because all that had happened was he suggested we go play on the West Mall, and it was, you guys got together in a little practice studio and he showed you a few songs. He figured out that you wanted to learn how to play upright bass because you were trying to play jazz.
I'd been playing for about a year at that point.
Yeah. And you're still trying to learn how to play changes, and we wanted to be in the 1 o'clock band or whatever it was called, jazz orchestra. And I guess we both were. But
we were, yes, we were.
Yeah. So we could play, but you and David got together, and so it's, a lot of 1-4-5 basically kind of songs, and that seemed pretty easy. And he figured out you had a great ear, and so he could throw anything at you, and he figured out that you knew who the Fine Young Cannibals were and thought it was fun to play that song too. And yeah. You guys instantly were bonded and matched musically. And so then you guys, I think both were like, let's just go play out, up on the West Mall where all the students are. And we weren't a band yet, but seeing you smiling, seeing him literally kind of take flight and levitate above the crowd, and then seeing all those faces, some of them were our friends, literally, but it felt like every one of them were our friends emotionally right away. And we had this different thing where we were anti-cool. We didn't like the artifice of rock and roll, which was at a particularly high point then, because horrible bands like Guns N' Roses were sort of dominating the world. And we came up in this era of MTV where things were shifting into being more about image than quality. And so we showed up in T-shirts and, tennis shoes and acoustic instruments and good songs. And then we were pretty good players. And all of a sudden it was like we found an audience instantly because David was so great at being in the moment and connecting with people. And he was funny, and, his songs were witty. And we had cowbells, and it was a racket, and we would get people that couldn't play at all at the finale of each little performance on the West Mall to come sit in with us, and it would just be chaos. And
I had the bag of cowbells.
The crowds on stage, that's another indelible memory.
Yeah, well, that started on the West Mall. That was that thing that David just did naturally. It's like, come on.
Pull everybody in.
Yeah,
Stand close to me while I do this.
Yeah. I guess people knew it would end within an hour or something, and it was kind of a refreshing little deal.
A lunch hour thing.
Yeah.
Come out and get your happy before you go back to your afternoon classes.
Upright bass, man. Who doesn't love a good upright bass?
How often do you see an upright bass on the street?
That's right. That walked all the way from 3/4 of a mile away uphill.
Uphill.
In a beige leather case.
Pleather.
Remember how that leather case felt?
I don't. I just remember carrying that thing like a canoe for 3/4 of a mile uphill. That was always good. That's also what I remember about I was telling Jeff when we talked before about playing on the West Mall, is seeing, seeing students' faces light up at what he was singing about, because most of the songs were about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really know what he was singing about, partly because I couldn't hear a word because I was trying to play drums, and I wasn't used to listening to words, and I didn't know the names of the songs for 15 years. I was just trying to play along, but seeing people that were, their story was being told by David in those songs. That's the thing that really, really.
That's what made that
like, wow.
Crowd so devoted.
Yeah.
They felt personally connected to the lyrics, and they could practically touch, receive from y'all's hands the instruments to participate in these songs that were the story of their current life.
Yeah.
That was a really important moment for a lot of people.
And
to be there at the birth of a creative movement. It felt really
people,
empowering.
I think most want from live music.
Two lonely people tried to quell each other's loneliness. They found that when they separated, all that they anticipated suddenly disintegrated. They felt so jaded, but that's how the story goes. Yeah, that's how the story goes. So you should always give your love away, give your love away. Should always give your love away, give your love away. Sing it.
Just to be in it themselves and get elevated the way it elevates the musician.
And to feel like it's telling their story. They can relate to it.
It was just this incredible community right away with David, the kind of stuff that people talk about now in social media and business.
Happiness will only come off if you shed it. Happiness won't only come in if you let it.
Integral to doing anything well. David was that all the way through from the very beginning, and it was a joy to get out of being in a stuffy music environment or a wannabe music environment.
And it always amazes me looking back on that. Like, nowadays, that wouldn't be that hard to do because of tweeting and YouTube videos and emailing it. Like, with social media, I feel like it's easier to do something like that now. I don't understand how Twang did it. It was all word of mouth, printed out flyers. You know what I mean? There was no social media. So it's weird that it, took off and, people would even know about the gigs, enough that, quite a big crowd would show up at every gig. And then, that's when they started getting gigs and, paying gigs.
Yonder was host of Open Mic Night at the Cactus Cafe.
I had been running it probably about a month, I think. I'd taken over from Bruce Newman. And Bruce came up to me on that Monday, and he said, "Hey, I've got these guys here. They want to play tonight, It was long after registration, and there was no space for them to play at all. And Bruce just kept, "Oh, yes, please let them play." And Jeff was standing right next to him, and I remember this very clearly. Jeff was just he had his head tilted and his eyes were big, wide, one of those puppies in the little dog pictures you see over the fireplace going, "Oh, we want to play,"
We all know the look.
Yeah, we know the look. And I said, "All right, let me see what I can do," So there was a spot, my spot, which I usually kept a little place for me, right at prime time, of course, and which most nights I gave away anyway. And so I said, "Yeah, all right, you guys come on and play for that," And they said, all right, I'm sorry, it's at 10:15 or 10:30, something like that. And
you were there,
fine.
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the place, Monday nights is, you've got the performers and one or two of their friends come with them. And so that's the room, 20, 30 people, And, 10:30 you're playing, and about 10:15, the place just was wall-to-wall people. Just came rushing in the door. We're going, what the heck, And then, of course, we put, Twang Shaka-Boom went on at 10:30 with this huge crowd that came in with them, and they just rocked the joint for 3 songs. And holy mackerel, my hair was blown straight back, and I was just in love with the band from that moment on. There was just an atmosphere that came off the stage. It's like 3 instruments. Of course, Fritz plays 15 instruments, but the percussion, bass, and guitar, but it sounded like just a huge wall of sound coming from these guys. It was just amazing, and I was a super fan from that point on. They almost didn't get to play, but they played, and they brought a crowd, and as soon as they were finished, them and the crowd went out the door.
It started
Just
a long
something else.
relationship with the Cactus, though.
Yes, it sure did.
That became a home base.
Yep.
Again, one of those places where...
For David, forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all think of as a home space for the sound.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. By the way, we're really this is the reason we wanted to do this show here at Cactus. Is really because, don't tell anyone we said this, but this is our favorite place to play. Because it's just the vibe in here is always just so groovy, man. And and so we went. This is the first place we played indoors, I think. So and they were really cool about it. So we came, in early October or something, just so all together. And so we wanted to do a free show here, to say, it's our way of saying thank you to our fans. Because when we're up on stage, it's like the reaction and the interaction between the performers and the audience on stage. But see, this one here at Cactus Cafe goes to 11. See?
It feels magical to look back and think how this all sort of burst out is a little bit of a dramatic way to describe it, but it felt so ingenious and organic to a particular moment that if everybody hadn't arrived at UT at that time, if they hadn't taken the certain classes or paths across campus that they took, if they hadn't stopped for a second and given themselves a break in the middle of the day, if I hadn't moved to Taos, I would not have stumbled across any of this. And the gifts that you guys showed, people from all walks of life, that talented skill was new for a lot of us to be around, to be in the presence of, to be able to talk to somebody who could do that felt really amazing. I thought of all 3 of you as wizards for the longest time. Just there was this magical power that channeled through y'all, and it affected everyone who felt it, and it was just amazing.
Well, thanks. Wizards. Wizards, I don't know about. All 3 of us get the wizard card, but I give one to David for sure.
I had never had close contact with anybody who had talent like that before.
Yeah.
So it was like standing next to, the actors from Star Wars or something. It was just really, really cool to be in the presence of people who could make that sound.
We felt the same way about you.
Y'all created all this
For
stuff.
real.
It was amazing.
Wow.
Thanks to Lee, Jan, Tommy, and Twang Twang Shaka-Boom, singer-songwriter and guitarist David Garza, percussionist Chris Searles, and bassist Jeff Haley. The It's No Secret podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Haley and me, Catherine Cuellar. In our next episode, Twang talks through the tracks from their first semester recording session and has their second legal tangle with Officer Bocephus. We're in Apple Podcasts now. If you like what you hear, please review us. Thanks for listening.
So just say for me.
I just thought that was such a cool story. Like, it's like got so many details about 1989.
The year, the number.
That sound of a funky drummer.
It truly was the sound of a funky drummer.